Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On today's episode, we're thrilled to have Skylar Wilson, whose family-run treehouse business, Firefly Treehouses, offers unique and intimate escapes for couples. Skylar and her family have created these enchanting retreats with a focus on privacy, connection, and a true immersion in nature. In this episode, we'll explore the story behind the business, the build of each of the tree houses, and the interior design processes, the challenges and joys of running a family business, and the thoughtful touches that make these places so special. Let's do it. This is, I think, one of the first cabins, tree houses, that we've talked to that is a family-run business. So I'd love if you can start by introducing yourself and then giving us like an overview of the properties, the family, how that kind of operates. That would be amazing.
Yeah, so we still try to like figure it out and navigate it every day, basically, because we're just kind of winging it out here. But so it was originally started by my parents, and so Mitzi and Brad originally purchased the land, 40 acres, and built the Wanderlust Treehouse on the property. And then she's, kind of over the years has just been kind of pulling me and my sister in, which has been fun. And we decided to build the Wild Soul Treehouse on the same property as Wanderlust. And my sister, she's younger, she's still chasing babies right now, but she's kind of become involved most recently as our social media manager. And so it's really fun. And, we all, kind of maintain the property. And so it's just us. And so it's pretty fun, but we enjoy it.
Yeah, but you all also work full-time jobs that, from what I can tell, are like pretty demanding jobs. So that is not easy.
No, it is not easy. And that's what I was just saying yesterday. I feel like I work absolutely every single day. But really the tree house is, that's where our passion is. And that's kind of what we love to do. And so if we could spend every minute, over there working, that's what we would do. And I think our actual careers have become, the things that we have to do to pay our bills. But the tree houses right now, that's our passion.
I think that's so relatable for so many people listening, and some have been able to make the jump to, okay, now I do this full time. But I think most of us, myself included, have full-time jobs that gives us that security because it does get scary. It's more the unknowns of rentals that make it harder. You don't have a W-2, so there's no guarantees.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't realize that how many people, actually continue to work full time. And so after talking to some more cabin owners, I guess it made me feel a whole lot better. Like, okay, I'm not the only one out here.
Yeah, because it's tricky, right? Because we get to know each other on Instagram where all we're talking about are our cabins. So it feels like so many friends that I have on Instagram, I think of them as just cabin owners. And then in reality, I like discover what they're doing full time, not even on the side. And I'm like, you're like a whole nother human over here doing this whole other thing.
Yeah.
So everyone is just juggling a lot of balls. What did you think, since your parents started it, when they came up with the idea for the first one? Do you remember when they came to you and they said, we're going to buy 40 acres, or maybe you already owned the land, and we're going to build a tree house? What was your reaction?
Well, so I think, initially, the purchase of the 40 acres, I think they weren't exactly sure what they were going to do on it, but they knew they wanted to do something. And so they, kind of had the land for a while, and, we thought the land was beautiful. But then, they're like, yeah, we're going to build a cabin. And then this cabin turned into, well, we're going to put it in the air. And I thought, she is crazy. I mean, she has lost her mind, but as we're continuing to kind of watch the treehouse build kind of unfold, and we're over there checking on it, watching them work, and I'm like, okay, I can see the vision. I think she's got a good idea here, but everyone thought they were crazy until it was done.
Yeah, which probably led to a little bit of your success, I would say, at that point. Obviously well executed. We're going to get to that next. But if you thought they were crazy, then guests who are searching on Airbnb for a weekend getaway also see it and probably have that feeling of like, oh, this is crazy in like a good way. Like, I want to try this out. It's so different from anything else.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, in the beginning, when I think they first opened the Wanderlust, there really wasn't that many tree houses out there. And so it really was, people ask, what do you do? And you tell them, and you just get a look, like just a blank stare, like, I don't really get it. But that was okay. It's not for everybody to get. And, but as that, continued to unfold, then it was like, wow, that's really cool. But I think that's a good thing in any build. If people don't get it, but you've got the vision, I think that's the most important thing.
I think so too, especially in the short-term rental space. I think in the primary home space, it can be risky to build, like architects like Frank Lloyd Wright back in the day, building like crazy houses. One, can people afford it? But two, is that really what you want to live in every day? But for short-term rentals, to see something like that, you're looking for 2 nights away. It's almost like the crazier, the better, because then it's more different from your day-to-day.
Yeah, I totally think so. And because if people they're looking for somewhere to go, they don't want to stay in their home. They want to stay in something that's different. And it's all about the experience. And it's, what can we do to make it even better for our guests? It's the fun part.
That's right. Where did your parents come up with that idea? Like when they told you about it, what had given them that idea, especially if there weren't that many tree houses at that point?
Yeah, I think when they originally were coming up with this plan to build on this land, I think at first she didn't have an idea of what she wanted it to be, but I think it kind of turned into, well, what would I like? What do I want to stay in? And, I think it goes back to just childhood dreams of, what does my inner child want to stay in? What do I want to get away to? And I think that's kind of where the treehouse originally came from.
Yeah. That was something beautiful you said in your pre-interview. I think the question was like, what advice would you have for others, or what can you offer others? And one of them, you said, just use your imagination and try and create something that people need and might not even know they need. I love that. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I think, just thinking back to when it seems like we opened it forever ago, but it's actually not that long ago whenever you really think about it, because, we were kind of getting going in early COVID stages. Everything goes back to COVID now. But thinking back, which they did have a few cabins that they had owned and had rented out for short-term rental. And, we're business owners and we're busy people. And I think, it just goes back to we are looking to create a space that we ourselves want to escape to. And that's really what it's about is, our tree houses, that's my favorite place to be. You are truly just immersed in nature, and there's just something so special about that, being out there, by yourself. All you can hear are birds chirping. You see wildlife. And we have just absolutely been kind of overwhelmed by, all the connection, the stress. We just want to get away and just be within ourselves and within our own mind, just to like absolutely recharge. And I mean, that's what we've done is we've just tried to create this place that is our own place to get away, but we just want to share it with other people too.
Yeah. You also mentioned that you set aside a good amount of time for you and your family to stay at your properties and to have friends and family stay there in order for you to constantly be thinking about guest experience and what changes and improvements you can make. Can you talk about how you, was that from the very beginning you knew that was important? Now do you prioritize it because you also need that time away? What does that look like, and how do you manage that alongside it being a business? Yeah,
so I think in the beginning stages, so I think listing the space, that's whenever we're, searching for friends, who can I trust to go stay and give me honest feedback.
Yeah.
What we need, what they wish that they had, what works, what didn't work. And so that's at that point, where we please go stay. And, usually people are more than willing to go stay. But
it's the honest feedback that can be hard. You have to be picky about which friends will actually give me the honest feedback.
Yeah, because some people go through, oh, it was great. And I'm like, I'm not looking for great. I'm looking for what do I need? What didn't you have?
Yeah. Don't be nice. That's actually not helpful. Yeah, I need you to tell me what you wish you had.
Yeah. And, and we get that. Even our close friends are like, oh, no, it was fun. And I'm like, no, I need at least 3 things. What could have went better? And we really got that good feedback, in the beginning from friends, but we kind of continue to ask friends, as it goes, because guests will give small feedback every now and then, but there's nothing, and we would much rather get constructive criticism from family and from friends versus guests who are paying to stay.
That's right.
And we also we get away ourselves over there whenever we can, usually during the week, just to stay, because if you don't stay, how do you know that everything's working the way that it should be?
That's right.
And you truly don't until you're over there and you're in the space just as your guests would be.
That's right. Take 2 showers back to back. Is there still hot water? Okay, take longer ones the next day. How about now, right? Like, you would never know that just cleaning. No. But if you stay there, you will quickly find out, oh, wait, guests have been experiencing this? What's one of the best blind spots that someone has discovered when giving you feedback, like one of your family or friends, or even you discovered for yourself?
It was, well, in the beginning, it was something so simple, as our wild Soul Treehouse, we have our hot tub. And there's steps going out from the hot tub, and there is a trail from the hot tub. And I had, just something so simple as, well, whenever I stepped out of the hot tub, I really wished from the steps that there was something that was flat that I could step on, because it is a kind of a gravel trail to the hot tub. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Yep. And just something that's so simple. I'm like, I've got to fix that right now before guests come, because I don't want to step on gravel. But whenever you're in that process of building and creating, I guess you don't walk through all of those steps. I mean, you think, okay, I have a nice trail to the hot tub, there it is. But just something so simple is you've got to walk through all of the steps.
That's right. Yeah. And even you can only experience things as yourself in your human body. And like, I remember when my dad stayed at our cabin in Boone, we have a large staircase and everything is hardwood, like the wall, everything. It's a cabin. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned, as a 70-year-old man, he was like, when I get to the bottom step, it's hard for me to see the difference between the bottom step and the floor. And so I almost tripped and fell. And I don't have that problem. So I never thought about that. But how inconvenient would that be? And this is an interesting thing over time. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. So I put a piece of colored duct tape on it so that you can clearly see. Now, when I first started building, everything was about aesthetic. I would never have done that, right? Like colored duct tape on the stairs. I was so precious about everything. And then after a couple of years, it was like, actually, guest experience is like way more important than how it looks. And so if that piece of colored duct tape can prevent a 70-year-old guest from falling and like breaking a bone, I don't care how it looks anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we, at first we're trying to make everything perfect, and like our Wanderlust Treehouse, we do have a little like hideaway kind of stairs that leads up into the porch. And at first it was, all about, oh, this is cool, they can climb up through the porch and raise it up. And it only takes, just a couple times of family going over there. And if we're going to clean, occasionally we'll bring our kids. Well, one kid going up and raising that up, and you just see the danger. You're like, oh my gosh, we've got to do something to fix it.
Never mind.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
But again, you wouldn't have known that if you didn't bring your kids. So I do think it really says the value of just experiencing it in different perspectives. The adults didn't realize that, but when children are there, then you suddenly pick that out. I'm in the process of making a reel for Cozy Rock that is like all the ugly changes we've made since we launched, like where I was so precious, but this ugly thing is totally, one of them is this like snorkel we have coming from the roof because we had to put in a water treatment system for radon, right? Yeah. Very important, very ugly. Yeah. And so like, I just think it's funny, but for anyone building now, I want to put that out there because it's like you want it to all be perfect, but actually like 1, 2, 3 years down the line, what you're going to care about most is that guest experience, guest safety, all of the things that make it, good in all of those ways too.
Right. And I think, in honest truth, the guests probably don't look at those things like we do because we inspect, every single area. And at first we're like, oh my gosh, that's so ugly. Guests probably don't even pay attention to it.
That's right.
But they would if they were to be injured or something. And so.
Yes. And imagine not even the review, but just like, would they ever tell anyone a positive thing about your place if their grandmother fell down the stairs and broke her hip at this cabin in Boone? Like, that's going to be a life-shaping experience that's related to you. And that's not the kind of experience we want to create.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, take us back to the build process. Who managed that? Did you all build it yourself? Did you hire a contractor for that first treehouse?
So I guess we did function as a general contractor of both builds, but the first treehouse, we did have a family friend that kind of volunteered to help, and which he had helped in our actual home builds, and so we were confident in his skills, and and we did have separate builders for each treehouse, but Wanderlust, I know I'd kind of mentioned this before, but it was not built in any way, shape, form, or fashion of the design that we originally had intended.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it was, there was a vision. There were not official plans because he didn't want plans. He wanted pictures, drawings. It was all drew up and talked about. And so the layout was actually probably a lot more similar to the Wild Soul Treehouse if you were to look at it on paper. And then
Wanderlust was first, and Wild Soul is the second one. Okay, just to clarify.
And so I know my mom showed up to the Wanderlust Treehouse build site one day, in which we don't live far. We're like an hour and 20 minutes away from the cabins. But she showed up, and they've already got it framed up. And she's like, "What is this?" And he said, "This is your treehouse. I changed it."
That is like my worst nightmare. What?
Yeah.
Without asking her or running it by her?
Yeah, I thought this would look better. And so, at first, just complete shock. What am I going to do? I've spent all this time dreaming about this space and how I wanted it. I had everything in mind, and now it's different. But it was already done, and it was going to be too expensive to, completely change. And so, she kind of...
What did that conversation look like?
Well, it wasn't pretty initially. It was...
Understandably.
Yeah, it was, this is not what I wanted. And, but the guy was just kind of determined that he thought that this would look better. He had a style in his mind, which is, not what you pay somebody. You don't pay somebody to build what they want on your property.
Unless that's clear on the front end. Sure, if it's a great designer and you're like, I trust you, go.
Yeah, no, this is not a designer by any means. But... which he's a creative, which is why that we kind of wanted him to do the treehouse for us. But I think we had just kind of come to the understanding of, okay, well, this is what we have now. It's too late. It's too expensive to fix. So we're just going to have to figure it out. But in hindsight now, I think it was the best mistake that could have ever happened.
Really?
Just because, I don't just... And it's just like the layout of the front of the Wanderlust Treehouse. It's kind of a whole lot more at an angle of what we wanted, but it gave us the opportunity to have, this big wall of windows in front of the bed, and also be able to share some of the windows with the kitchen space and the bathroom. And so, and I think, and people really love the design. But it was a mistake.
The windows are great. I'm looking at it right now as you're talking about it. The windows are great.
Yeah.
But I think it says a lot about your family, honestly, that you were able to recover from that and be so grateful for it. Because I think a lot of people, even if the end in their head, they're like, okay, this is better. The ego would get in the way. And I think for me, I'd still constantly see it as what I wanted it to be. So the fact that you all were able to come around, it is beautiful.
We love it now, but it's just something funny to think about. That, can you believe that we would have ever built this place differently?
Right.
But now it's like the best mistake that could have happened. But
yeah.
But we did change the builder for the Wild Soul Treehouse because
of that. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, we don't trust that you're gonna do. Did he ever come back and ask about the second one? Because you're in a smaller area, aren't you? Did he know about the second one?
Yeah, we are. Which he was actually traveling from where we live over to the property, so it was a long drive for him. But we were grateful at that time that he was just kind of willing to take it on. Because, at that time there weren't that many tree houses, and so trying to convince somebody to build that for you, it was a bit of a challenge.
Right.
But for the second one, we did find somebody more local, And, and we were the general contractor, the designer. But he was truly the talent. He's just 100% craftsman. And it was only him and one other person that built the treehouse. But, and he did an outstanding job, and any ideas that we had, he really challenged them and said, and he would tell us that's going to look like crap if he thought that it would.
Which is helpful, because my builder did that occasionally, or that's just going to be really expensive. You can't afford it, because they've done so many houses. They have a better concept than me, who hasn't done very many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, we would have ideas and, well, this is how I want it to look. And he would tell us, well, that's not going to work. Which, I'm not a builder. I don't know what's going to work and what's not. But then, he would go home and kind of think about it overnight. And he would come back the next day. I figured out a way to make that work. And we were like, oh, this is amazing. So we would just kind of go back and forth on some of the design stuff. But, he's truly a gem.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked to only 2 other people who have tree houses, Fort Treehouse, Lauren and Cam up in Canada, and then Samantha at the Woods, Maine in Maine. And both of them talked about the unique challenges. Cam is specializes in building tree houses, from the trees and kind of authentically. And I know there's different versions of a tree house, from literally all trees to no trees, but surrounded by trees. How did you all approach that? Did he have experience building a tree house in the past?
Well, he built similar, but I think in our area, with Smith Lake being here, there's a lot of cliffs, and so a lot of the homes are kind of elevated, and so he had experience in that, but he is truly, I don't want to say from the woods, but he's truly very woodsy himself, and so his nickname is actually Barefoot Benji. Is his
really
name. Yeah, and so he has lots of personal experience, I think, as well. In kind of unique projects. And so that's kind of what we were looking for.
Yeah. Someone who has the skills, but also has the heart for something that's different. I'm not going to make this just like everything else.
Yeah. Because, we met on the second build. I think he was the third person that we met with and decided to use him. And the first guy was great, but he just didn't have the help at the time. But, the second contractor that we had met with, I ended up actually leaving the meeting because I just knew this is not going to work. Because
so you just got up and walked out mid-meeting?
Yeah, I was like, I'm done. I know all I need to know.
I'm too busy. I can't waste time.
I know, but because I was trying to explain, this is the vision. This is what we want. And I'm explaining my vision, and he's changing the vision, during mid-conversation. And it was just starting to click. I was like, you're not even seeing the vision in our conversation. So how are you going to be able to build it? And
yeah.
So
you're like, we've done this before where the vision was changed. I don't want to do that again.
Exactly.
And also, I do think there's something to being a woman in that space too. And I don't know if you felt that dynamic at all, but when I've done renovations, it always feels like I'm always dealing with male contractors. And I was single when doing a lot of it. And so I'd always get the question from them or the people on the phone, can we talk to your husband? And I'd be like, no.
Yes.
You're stuck with me. And and you're going to have to talk to me as if I'm the husband, if that makes a difference to you.
Well, I think that probably had a lot to do with it, because it was me and my husband at the meeting. And, my husband is great, and he supports us 100%. And especially my vision, because usually to him initially it sounds crazy, but he's kind of learned over the years, okay, I'm just going to go with it, because in the end it's going to work out.
Yes.
But
love that.
But during the meeting, the contractor, he was talking to my husband, and I was thinking,
yes,
he has no idea what I want. He doesn't even know what we're going to build.
Why am I not part of this conversation?
Yeah. And so I'm just like, well, this isn't going to work. We're not really compatible personality wise, so I think this is the end of this.
Yeah, good for you. I find eye contact tells me everything I need to know. When we meet with if we have a plumber come to the cabin or anything, and all 3 of us are there, because I'm financially responsible for almost all of our properties, and anytime they only make eye contact with him and occasionally look at me, that's all I need to know. You are talking to the wrong person right now. I mean, you can talk to both of us, but if you're going to only talk to one of us, it should be me. Right. But because of my gender, you're choosing him. And I'm like, that's all I need to know.
Yep, 100%. And I think with the contractor that we ended up going with, Benji, I mean, he's the best guy ever, but I mean, his saying, I think, throughout the whole build is like, "What have you crazy women come up with now?" And I mean, I think he's just kind of learned to accept it that we're going to have crazy ideas, but that they're good, and so then he would go with them, and so that really meant a lot.
It probably helped with the second one that you had the first one as a proof point of like, yep, we might be crazy. Look at this crazy, awesome thing we built. The first one can be hard because you haven't proven yourself yet that you could do this and that you have a really good vision. This takes me to the interior, though, because I think that you all are responsible for all the interior design. Are you not?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And that's one of the things that really stands out to me about your places is that I hear a lot recently of people getting frustrated with like the whitewashing of interior design where it's just like a lot and yours has like vintage pieces in it. It has like they're new builds, and this is I don't like new builds because they feel like there's no history, and yours feel like there's history there. Can you talk to me about how you approach the design, where you got these things? How did you create that feeling?
Oh man. So well, I will say, you know, obviously that the styling of both places are drastically different, but you know, we did kind of do that on purpose. But so I know at least with Wanderlust, you know, like the big doors that you see outside.
Yes.
Those are actually from a local architectural salvage place. I mean, they date back. I mean, I want to say it was like 1800s. They come overseas. They were actually doors from some kind of, I think, I don't know, they may have said castle. You know, I don't know where they came from, but
they look like they could be in a castle. They're dramatic.
They are beautiful.
Yes.
And heavy, and I mean,
yes.
You know, walking around an architectural salvage place, you know, I think, and those just clicks just initially. We're like, we don't know where we're going to put those, but we've got to have them.
Yep.
And so we do try to pick up pieces from, you know, architectural salvage places, and then find out how we're going to incorporate them later.
Yep.
Which is challenging at first, but with both builds, we've just tried to accumulate decor over the years. And, you know, our husbands can tell you, our shop where, you know, you may be able to park cars and equipment is full of decor. And
it's your storage unit.
Yeah, it's absolutely the storage unit. We have no room for any of our things at home because it's all full of decor.
Yes.
And but I think that's kind of, it's a lot easier to shop for a cabin that way for us, picking up pieces, you know, over time than trying to furnish one 100% after it's done.
Yeah.
And but
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, it's fine.
I do think that's challenging, though, because I also love that stuff. And what I tend to do is collect it all into a shed and then try and put it all together. And then it just looks sloppy, right? Like, this is where I hire interior designers. But I always want interior designers that can help me take a piece with personality and then design around that. So are you the one with the eye for the, like, holistic vision? Who in your family has the skill set that can really do that? Because these do not look sloppy.
Thank you. I think it's actually both of us, and my sister too, because whenever we're going shopping for a place, and especially, you know, obviously Wild Soul came later, but even Wanderlust, we all three of us go shopping together. You know, I mean, we'll make a weekend out of it. We're like, we're going to go to these stores. This is kind of the style that we have in mind. We'll look at pictures, you know. With Wanderlust being, of course, more like bohemian kind of feel. You know, we kind of look at some inspiration pictures. Okay, this is kind of what we're going for. Now let's try to find some pieces that's inspired by this while we're out.
Yeah.
You know, we have 2 cars loaded down completely. In the back, you can't see out the rearview mirror. And then we bring all those home. And then usually whenever it's time to decorate the places, all 3 of us will go again. And that's one of our favorite things to do. You know, we go, we turn some music on, we spend all day, we grab lunch. And I mean, for hours, it seems we're placing pieces, we're stepping back, staring at it. Okay, that looks good. Or stepping back and like, okay, don't like that at all. Doesn't go there. You know, move it somewhere else, rinse and repeat. And then, you know, we'll just kind of decide, well, actually, I really love this piece in the store, but now I hate it. We're not even going to use it at all. Yeah. And then we'll end up taking it back and saving it for either our homes or thinking, well, we may can use this later on, and then we'll keep it in our little storage shop. But or we'll end up saying we've got to take all this back because we hate it. But
Yeah.
But it takes a while, but that is fun for us. We enjoy doing that.
Yeah. And having, honestly, a storage shed is a good sign of your ability to curate. Because what it means is that you go in and you are good at saying, nope, this needs to come out. But it doesn't mean I don't love that piece. It just means I don't love that piece right here with these other pieces. And maybe we can use that somewhere else. Yeah. I also can't help but notice the sliding door in the Wanderlust. And that it has so much personality, but it looks custom made for your place. Did someone design that for your place? Did someone build it? And it matches also the shutters on the outside.
Yeah, so that my mom actually built both of those pieces.
Really?
The shutters and the door, yeah. And so she did a great job on both of those. And she will find a picture, something that's kind of inspirational online, and which I hate to say it, like, we're cheap, but I mean, maybe we're frugal.
Frugal, I think, is a better word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smart with your money.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see something and we're like, wow, we really love that. I'm not paying that. I can build that.
Yep.
So it turns into a lot of, well, I can do that myself. Maybe sometimes it's a little bit delusional, but we're going to try it. And if it doesn't work out, then we're going to find somebody to help us fix it. And so it's worked out so far. But like I said, we really enjoy that. And we've learned a whole lot along the way.
Yeah. And the more frugal you are in the places where it is something you can make, then the more you have to splurge on the occasional items where you're like, listen, I can't make this, but this is going to really make guest experience like off the charts. That's how I think about it. It's like, I'm not trying to cheapen guest experience ever, but I am trying to be smart about, we don't have an unlimited budget. We're not like millionaires. And so where we spend that money, we have to be strategic with it. So that takes me to Wild Soul, which I'm looking at right now. I'm guessing you led the way on design for this one, or did all three of you do this one too? You did. Okay. Where are those chairs from at that table? Are those Chilton chairs?
No. So Wild Soul should probably be sponsored by, I don't know if you've ever heard of the stores, Dirt Cheap.
No.
We should totally be sponsored. But it's like a return place for a bunch of expensive stores, and so, or an overstock store, if you think of that. And they were kind of spread out all over the South, and we kind of like went on a return store binge, and kind of picked up items along the way for about a year and kind of held on to them. But yeah, I don't know. Wild Soul is definitely kind of more of a organic style, I would say, but definitely a frugal find of many of the decor items, but with occasional splurges for stuff. But yeah, I wish that I could say, oh, they came from this fancy store, but no.
They look like chairs, that are really, really expensive. And Chilton, I think, I'm pretty sure, is based out of Freeport, Maine. But those look just like those chairs, and I've eyed them forever. And when I saw them in your listing, I was like, are those? Oh my goodness, they're beautiful. The ones at that table and that place, I just love them. And the stand-up mirror, I also think, is just always a classy touch. Like full-length mirrors are shockingly helpful. We don't have one in Cozy Rock, and I think about getting one all the time. But it would have to be a stand-up one, and they're so expensive. So I've been on the hunt for a good deal for one of those.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you approach this one differently than the first one in a way? Because this is what's always tricky for people who add a second and a third property. The question of, okay, what is brand consistency? Is that even a thing in short-term rentals? Do we go totally different? Are there things we keep in common? How did you think about how is this an extension of Wanderlust and also its own unique treehouse?
Yeah. So I think, whenever we were coming up with this idea for this second build, we wanted to keep a lot of the same features as far as just complete privacy. Obviously, that's kind of our number one priority. But obviously, Wanderlust has the outdoor showers, and and we're thinking, okay, what kind of space can we have that's similar, but has completely different features? Because if we're going to have guests we have guests who come and stay in Wanderlust, and they say, oh, we want to come back and stay in Wild Soul. They don't want to stay in the same treehouse.
That's right. They want a different experience.
Yeah. And so, we which we went with a completely different style, but just, I guess, stayed true to the privacy, the peacefulness, you're submersed in nature. You have an outdoor feature of the hot tub at Wild Soul, which is, a stark difference from the outdoor showers, but still a unique experience.
Yeah.
And so we kind of racked our brains about that for a while and settled on that wood burning hot tub at Wild Soul. And so far, our guests have really loved it.
It's actually a really smart business strategy, I feel like, whether you did this on purpose or not. You had success with the outdoor shower at the first one, and you didn't put an outdoor shower at the second one. You put a hot tub, and yours is a wood-fired hot tub. And at the other one, you don't have a hot tub. So what that does is you go to one, you experience that. Then you want to become a repeat guest to try the second one. Then you know which one maybe you like the most, and you can keep coming back to that one. So it like is naturally increasing the number of bookings. I mean, obviously you're not thinking about it like, how do we get the most money? But it is by creating multiple unique experiences. It is a smart business move too, in terms of getting people to try each and then figure out which one they like the most, or just keep coming back to both of them.
Right. Yeah. And which, and they do share that pretty large lake too, with like a dock, and people fish and kind of canoe on it too. And so they each have their own mutual experience, but we wanted to, make one or have unique experiences at each treehouse as well. And I think so far that we've done that.
Yeah.
But, in the future, I think we would love to have my sister build a treehouse on the property too. And we're already, what can be the unique feature for who builds the treehouse, so we're already kind of brainstorming there. But we don't know, when that build would kind of take place, but we're dreaming already. So
I also love that then all three of you have taken the lead on different tree houses with the help of each other to help make all of them strong. But one person has the creative lead, which creates kind of the unique difference between that. That is something that most folks growing properties don't have, because it's usually, from my experience in interviewing folks, it's often just a couple who are doing one after another. So it's the same two people creating all of them. And that's great for brand consistency, but I really like the family aspect. Yeah. That you're like, oh, mom did this one, I did this one, my sister's doing this one.
Yeah, and I mean, which there is some competition there, because
I love that.
I know, we love it, but we're constantly comparing. Oh God, well you have that. Well, you've done that. Now I have to do something different. Which we're not in competition to win. Against each other, but it's playful. Of well, what I've got to make mine just as good as yours. But it's fun.
Yeah. Do you compete with or do you pay attention to bookings and which one is getting higher occupancy or higher reviews?
Well, so luckily our reviews have been pretty consistent, 5 stars for both places, but I would definitely say, so Wanderlust, got a ton of attention, especially in the beginning, and Wild Soul being newer, which I have been I'll say blessed with the bookings for Wild Soul. Because, opening it at first, this is my first, short-term rental experience. And I just said, over and over, if I can just pay the bills, I'll be happy. Yeah. But, every month since we've opened it, we've paid the bills and then some, which it's gave us an opportunity to kind of continue to invest in the Wild Soul property to try to make it just as special as Wanderlust.
Yeah.
So, it's a friendly competition, but I guess we don't really pay much attention to booking numbers, but it's pretty fun.
That is one of the treats I will say of having a full-time job, is that it does remove that pressure of all I need to do is pay these bills. I need there not to be additional expenses. And if it can do that, it's a win. And then past that, I think those hosts tend to just keep reinvesting in the properties. That's what we did for years, because we're not relying on that for income. And so it's just okay. And then these last 2 years, we really focused on building up a savings account so that if another COVID happened, which ended up being really good for the short-term rental industry. But at the beginning, for anyone who was in it in those first couple months, it was terrifying because in our county, they shut down all rentals. So all of a sudden, every booking was canceled outside of our control. And you're like, no longer is it covering the expenses. Now we have an extra property, and we're also going through COVID where my business was losing business. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that really reshaped my whole thought process. And we still, but the savings was really slow because we're still reinvesting constantly, because that's always our mindset of like, we have a little extra money this month. Well, we've been meaning to do
Exactly.
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because even in the build process, you're dreaming of, well, what would I like to have here?
Yeah.
And we don't have an exponential amount of money that we can throw at this thing.
That's right.
But as we said, okay, well, first, this is what we're doing. We're doing this first. We can come back and add later. And so we have slowly, over the course of since opening, especially Wild Soul, we're continuing to add just small projects here and there with the money that we have. But I guess, and we have, projects around the entire property too, like joint projects with my mom. And so, we're occasionally spending money on those joint projects too, but it's all for the greater good of the property. And so it's kind of been joyful just to watch kind of these small projects kind of continue to unfold along the way too.
Has it been stressful at all? Because I co-own one of our properties with my twin sister. And there can be moments where like she's very conservative and risk averse. So when we first opened the property, she was like, we absolutely need a generator. And Sean and I were like, why? We won't even have that many guests in the winter. And like, what are the chances it'll happen when we lose power? Because it's $10,000 for a generator. And she was like, no, we absolutely have to have one. Well, that's $5,000 for us that we didn't necessarily agree. Anyway, I know personally some of the conflicts that can happen. How do you all navigate that? How do you all, especially with those joint projects on the land, has it been really a blessing working alongside each other, or a learning curve, or both?
Well, I think it's really been a blessing, I would say. We don't really have many tiffs where we're kind of, well, I want this. We haven't really had that yet. But I will say, my parents have owned like their own business separate from the Treehouses for years. And I started working there before I could drive a car. And, and they own it together. And so there's always been an element of, we have to work together no matter what.
Yeah.
And then we have to come home together. And so it's been pretty easy to kind of separate that and just be able to do our own thing. And which I will say, I've had ideas about small projects and stuff and talking to them about it. Like I'm just working on a moon gate right now, or a trellis that's kind of nearby a creek. And, talking to them about it. Well, I've got this idea. I'm wanting to do this. And I can just see kind of the wheels turning. And they're looking at me like, okay. And, but I'm thinking I'm going to do it anyway. And then so
when you say the wheels turning, you can see them being like, this might be a crazy idea. I don't know what she's doing.
I know. I'm like, well, let me show you pictures, and I'll show it to them. And they're like, okay, yeah, that looks good. But then, well, I'll say, I started the project and it didn't go like I wanted it to. It looked like crap. We had to tear it down and completely redo it. But then after I start redoing it, then they come and look at it and they're like, okay, well, that's going to look good now. But they're not really pushy of telling me, that's not going to look good or that's not going to work. They'll let me kind of figure it out in my own time.
Yep. Yeah.
So I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because I do feel like sometimes in the world of Instagram, we all get to know each other's cabins by the finished, beautiful final product rather than the messy middle or beginning where you have an idea and some great ideas turn into something truly amazing and some turn into a pile of scrap wood. And that just is what it is.
Yeah. I'll have to share that whenever I get finished with this trellis. I'll share the ugly in the middle. And luckily, my husband goes up there with me, and because I'm not strong, I need the help. And so he comes over there, and I'm like, I really need your help to work on this trellis. And so he comes, he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, we're tearing it down. And he's like, all the way? Yeah, all the way. We're completely starting over. And he's like, well, this is going to be great, but you got to do it. And so But
I love that he's so supportive. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about hosting because I do think you guys do a lot. You host specifically for couples, no children, no pets, just for couples. And this is something we've struggled with because that was our original vision, but it's really hard to stay true to that and say, no children. For us, we allow dogs because we have dogs and we just like love that. But did this come from the very beginning? You knew this was going to be that boundary, or did it come from like a year of learning and discovering what didn't work, and that made you more confident in drawing that boundary?
Yeah. Well, it did come from the beginning, because I think it was an idea in the beginning that, we're creating a space for couples to, to reconnect, or friends, whoever wants to come. That was kind of the idea from the beginning. And it probably did come somewhat from the fact that we're suspended, in the air. It's dangerous. And I will say, my other job comes into play in this, because I am a nurse practitioner in the ER. And so I see the worst of the worst. I can look at an object and see an injury from it. And we just don't want anything to happen, to any kids. And so that makes it especially easy to stick to that boundary.
Right.
But it did come from the vision too of kind of going back to, this is what we need. We need to reconnect as couples. We need to slow down. We need, time to talk, have a conversation. And that's kind of the experience that we want to give to people. And so it's been pretty easy sticking with that, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And you go all in on that experience, which I really like. So here's how far all in. It seems you actually make your own wine that you leave for guests. Is that true? And how do you do that?
Yeah. So we do make our own wine. And this kind of started last year. As an experiment, I would say. Everything is an experiment with us. But we do have friends that have a winery, and kind of they, make wine for weddings, all this, and they got really good at it. And so since they were like close friends, we thought, well, they've done it and they've got really good at it. We love their wine. We can do it too. And, like we have time to take on any more projects, but that is truly fun. And so at first it was my mom. Doing a lot of research and watching a ton of videos, reading a ton, trying to learn. And she says, I want you to come and help me make this wine. And I have friends that make wine too, so I had to talk to them about it. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll come over this day and we'll do it. And I remember there was just the funny first time that we did it. The one recipe that she was following, it recommended a certain amount of sugar. And I show up to her house, and she's like, well, I have went to 3 stores and bought all the sugar that they had because they didn't have enough.
It takes that much sugar?
No, it does not. It's completely misread the instructions. And we have countertops piled full of pound bags of sugar. We have enough to donate to a local food bank, or just to make wine forever. But it was a good laugh that we had at first. Big learning curve. But
so now your storage unit has old, reclaimed items that you haven't used yet, and a whole bunch of sugar.
Yeah. I'm like, what did the cashier say whenever you bought all the sugar out of 3 stores? And she's like, I don't know what they were thinking. But yeah.
This makes me really like your mom. This is 100% something that I would do. That is very relatable.
Yeah. So that was fun. We had a good laugh about that. I think I tried to take her picture with all her sugar that she but I will say now she has absolutely, they have perfected the wine, which I think they're working on a cranberry kind of for the fall and winter right now. But they just finished up a batch of strawberry wine, and it's delicious.
Yeah. What are some of you have a lot of unique features that you've built in specifically for this purpose of reconnecting and couples. What are some of the small details that you've added that get the most positive feedback from your guests?
Let me see. Well, no, our guests, I will say we probably get our most feedback on the outdoor showers in the hot tub. But like our grilling decks that are outside and our just sitting areas that we have near the lake, people, I feel like they love that the most. But I will say it's really been our outdoor features, where people can just sit outside in the quiet and just chit chat. And we do try to include like some small things, there's stuff that we would like. There's decks of cards that's just like intimate questions for couples, just like conversation starters, and we've gone through them ourselves. And, before we take them over there, we're like, looking through the questions, we're like, oh, this is so good, and we just absolutely love hearing that feedback from guests. They're like, we were truly able just to reconnect as a couple because which we have no Wi-Fi, and that's a big deal.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of people, that's a turn off, but that is on purpose, because we're glued to our phones 24/7. So just turn your phone off and look at each other, and I don't know, that's just the experience that we're trying to give.
I love that so much. We intentionally did not put a TV at our cabin, but we put business level Wi-Fi in because my thought was I want people to be able to work from home. And honestly, if we're being totally transparent, I have to be able to work from there so that I can stay for longer amounts of time. But as a result, guess what we spend a lot of time doing at the cabin? And if someone forced us off our phones, we've thought about getting one of those lock boxes where, yes, we have Wi-Fi, but we encourage you to put it in this lockbox with a timer on so that you can have that experience, but not even having Wi-Fi takes it another level.
Mm-hmm. And which, you have good cell phone service out there. So, people, they're connected if they want to be. But it just gives you one more barrier to, let's put our phone down. Let's just be in the nature and let's talk to each other. And so I think
it sends a message about what you value and what you're trying to help them do, which I like. And if they have good cell service, our cabin in Freeport has horrible cell service. So we almost felt like we had to for emergency purposes because sometimes you couldn't even make phone calls. But I do like just something, even like a lockbox or something that you can do that encourages people like this. We are not just giving you a place to stay. We are trying to help you create an experience that you will remember.
Yeah. And we've thought about, adding Wi-Fi off and on throughout the time that we've had it, and kind of just reserving it for emergency purposes. But so far, everybody's had good service. And so we're just kind of, revisit that, again and again in the future if we feel like we need to. But right now, everybody is kind of really enjoying that feature.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it sounds like it. All 5-star reviews, no complaints. Okay, for the last 5 minutes, I want to do some hot topics about hosting and just get your take on them. You can go in detail as much as you want, or you can keep it really short and sweet. It's totally up to you. Direct booking. Pro or con?
Yeah. I think pro. We love direct booking.
What percentage of your bookings come from direct versus Airbnb?
Well, I will say our direct booking percentage is not where we would want it to be because we are working on a website right now. And so, we're kind of in a pause for that right now. But I think direct booking, it's got to be 100% a priority this year. Not to take anything away from the, online services of, booking and getting your place out there. But there's always a question of, what happens if it goes down? Then you're left with nothing.
And the fees. Just recently, someone is booking for a honeymoon and they're booking ahead. We're opening up a date for them. And they asked me what the total would be. And I was like, I actually don't know. I only know what we charge, but I'll open those dates and you can check. And when I saw the total, it was so different that I don't think I realized exactly how high the fees were. Yeah. And that was the moment. I've been thinking about it for a while, but that was the moment where I was like, we have to make this a priority. And also it's so time consuming to do it, to get it set up.
It is. That's what, and and we have to have help. We're not tech people, and
me neither.
So that's what, we're kind of working on that as we speak, and we hope to be able to launch, because we have a small website, but it's nothing what we want it to be, but we hope to be able to launch a really nice website with direct booking.
Yeah. And I'm absolutely happy to pay the service fees to Airbnb when they find guests for us. But if the majority of our guests, which I'm guessing yours too, are coming from Instagram, I'm putting in the work to find them. So I actually don't want to pay you the fee for that when I'm just sending them straight to Airbnb. And doing all the marketing work too, and time and money and all that. What about checkout procedures? I feel like hosts are getting a lot of shit about this on Insta or TikTok and Reels and things like that. What is your stance? What do yours look like?
Oh man. So, I know we revisit this and talk about it all the time. I will say a big deal with checkout procedures is dishes for us. Do you ask guests to wash them? Do you ask them not to wash them? Which we do kind of kindly ask guests to wash some of the dishes, but not, if they don't want to wash pots and pans, they don't have to.
Wow.
But then they can leave them for us. But so far we haven't had anybody complain about that. But other than that, we don't have very many checkout kind of procedures. Just washing the dishes is a huge help for us. And some guests will leave and they don't wash them, which we don't say anything about that. We just kind of wash it and go along. But it does take up a ton of time.
Yes.
Whenever you're there cleaning and trying to flip the space and you only have X amount of hours to do it in between, and you spend an hour washing dishes, I mean, that's a big deal whenever you're trying to flip a space for somebody.
For sure. And if it's a day or two later and crusted on, then it takes even longer.
Oh, yeah.
You are literally the only person I've ever heard of who doesn't require that they wash dishes. So that feels very generous to me. We ask guests, wash all your dishes and load the dishwasher.
Well, yeah, and we don't have a dishwasher, which is a big thing. But no, we do.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because washing dishes is way more time intensive then.
Yeah, and so, but no, we do ask that they try to wash all the dishes that they use, but they don't have to do the pots and pans if they don't want to. But now, most people do. And they put it all back nice and neat, but we still have to go back and check to make sure because, God forbid your next guest check in and there's food on the dishes.
Yep.
And so sometimes we have to rewash. But, other
that is a quality thing, I'll say, because sometimes we'll pull out a pot or pan to use it. And we'll be like, oh, this is not what I would want a guest to find. But for our cleaner, because we ask guests to do their own dishes, if otherwise our cleaner has to take out every single pot from every cabinet and check it every time.
Yeah, I know.
And again, to your point, when you're flipping a cabin in only a couple of hours, it's hard to do all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And which I think, and we ask that they drain the hot tub before we get there. Which we're kind of evaluating the hot tub procedures kind of as we go, just to kind of optimize that a little bit.
Well, and to be clear, your hot tub is wood fired, so that is a bit different than someone who has like a jet powered running hot tub. It feels like common sense after you use it needs to be drained.
Right. Yeah. And but it is kind of a little tricky thing just to make sure that you take care of it good, but. Overall, there's really not that many. We ask that they take out the trash because, if there's a day or two in between and the entire cabin smells like trash, oh my gosh, it's hard to get that smell out. But luckily, we've been pretty blessed, I would say. It's always more good experiences than bad and checkout.
Same. Yeah. Okay, last one. Are you guys off grid?
Off grid, as in.
Do you have a septic system?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what about toilet paper? This is a selfish question because I have had one ply out at my cabins for years because of the septic. Mm-hmm. And then we had one review about the one ply toilet paper. And so then we rethought everything. And so now we upped it, but I'm worried about our septic system. Tell me about your toilet paper situation.
Toilet paper is so important in the short-term rental. That is something so small, but if I go somewhere and I do not like the toilet paper, I am mad the whole time I'm there. We do invest in good toilet paper because, I just can't do it. I can't go somewhere and just wipe with toilet paper I can see through.
I agree. You're totally right. So how did you find one that is, because I had all in expensive, nice toilet paper at the beginning, and then someone stayed and wrote me a message and said, I'm in contracting and I work on septic systems. You have got to get rid of that toilet paper. It is killing your septic. And I panicked because I was like, well, a septic problem is a big problem. Yeah. So then I switched to septic-friendly toilet paper and hated using it. And that's the one we got the review on. So what toilet paper do you use? Do you know? Do you mind sharing?
I think, I don't know what Mom uses in hers, but I actually use the Charmin brand, but it's a knockoff of the Charmin, of the Ultra Strong. But that's so funny.
And is it septic safe? Is it labeled as septic safe?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to have to look into it. But I know we use that same brand at home and we have for years without any problems, but I guess I should probably.
And you have a septic at home too?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's good feedback. Because I will say at our first cabin, I used good toilet paper for years and years and years, never thought twice about it. And we just had our septic system pumped and it was totally fine. And it was not septic safe toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
But I trust this dude. He's the professional in that field and I'm clearly not. But now I'm panicked about what's going to happen to our septic system.
And that's all it takes. All it takes is like one question for you to start thinking about something.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, I've got to look into this.
Imagine if your septic exploded during a guest stay. Like, I mean, talk about worst case scenario. So I'm like now a little panicked about it. What a note to end on, Skylar.
Toilet paper.
That's right. This was such a treat, though. I know how busy you are, so like, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. This was great.
Thank you. I've had fun. We've enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for joining us, and if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.